one great aspect of teen magazines overall is we're all trying to help youth uplift their voices and get their work out into the world.
Through creative writing education, what you're saying is, I want to hear what you have to say.
It was, I think, for both of us, just one of the most consequential moments of our, not just our creative lives, but of our lives, period.
Welcome back to the show, teen artists and writers. Today's episode is called Innovators and Creative Thinkers Carving Your Own Path, because we're focusing on Scholastic Awards alumni who have gone off to create their own amazing opportunities. I think so many times in life we want to go start a new venture, a business idea or a medium that's never been done before, and we're terrified to be the only ones who see potential in our own idea. The guests I'm speaking with today have gone off post-Scholastic Awards to pursue their own creative ideas, like taking a chance on a documentary subject that's never been researched, or starting a nonprofit, or a literary magazine. These alums recognized a key missing component missing in the art world and decided to carve the path themselves. Starting off, we're chatting with Rosie Hong and Caroline Zhang, two Scholastic alums who are a perfect example of how and why taking advantage of the alumni network can lead to unexpected paths and amazing opportunities. Rosie and Caroline are awards gold medalists and founders of Fleeting Daze, a literary magazine with a mission to provide young artists and writers everywhere a platform to amplify their voices, share their experiences, and exemplify the fleeting details of their lives that have shaped them to be who they are today. They originally met at the national ceremony in 2023 and have remained creative partners ever since. Please enjoy this conversation with Rosie and Caroline. So right off the bat, let's just hear a little bit about Fleeting Daze, your literary magazine, how you got started, and a little bit about meeting at the Scholastic Awards.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, Rosie and I were national gold winners in 2023, and we both met at this classic writing ceremony in New York. There's like a little period of time where kind of after the writers panel at the ceremony, there was a reception for all of those student writers and artists, and that's where we met. It was an awesome environment. There were so many people who were super welcoming and humble, and it was so cool to talk to them and be able to relate to them as writers, especially because we were both people who had come from communities that weren't really big on writing, or like schools that weren't big on writing. So we kind of realized that we had a lot of like similar thought processes and creative processes with writing. We ended up keeping in touch kind of over online over Instagram, and we were talking about like creative writing opportunities at our school at some point. And we like I think one of us mentioned like a student run like literary magazine, and we were like, hey, wait a minute, that's like a really cool opportunity that we could potentially do. Um, we both wanted to start one initially, but we were a little bit hesitant because we both were a little like worried and nervous about the logistical side of things, about the work that would go into it and what we had to do. But we also realized that both of us had a set of skills that we had gotten from like previous activities that we could also apply to the magazine.
Mhm.
And they just so happened to be the things that the other person was nervous about. So we were super lucky that we got to work together like that, and that's how we got started.
Yeah, wait, my story with Caroline is so beautiful. I'm like so grateful I met her. Um, as for like the concept of our literary magazine, I remember sitting in call with Caroline for like 2 hours, and we were just throwing out like random words that would get us inspired for our themes of the magazine and kind of the concept. And I remember we were brainstorming reasons as to, for example, why youth would want to submit to our literary magazine specifically. And we realized one aspect of literary magazines that new writers can feel more hesitant submitting to or feel more disconnected is the very long turnaround times. So maybe sometimes you submit a piece of work and they take months to get back to you, or even a year. And there are also opportunities that are only exclusive to writers in the United States. And we kind of wanted to experiment with having very fast turnaround times, specifically 24 hours. So new writers experimenting with new forms and genres and wanting some feedback or wanting some responses would get very quick responses from us and would instantly feel more connected into the literary community and feel more inspired. Additionally, the way we introduce themes again to the way we throw out like random words to try to get us inspired for themes. Our issues like Reverie, Lunar, Wave, Mirage, and our now fifth issue, Aurora, all tie back into like emerging voices, emerging perspectives, acknowledging the coming of age. And we want young writers to feel inspired and have a comfortable environment to discuss these issues and these topics candidly. And that's kind of what kickstarted our magazine with these big themes and big ideas. And we started building our way in social media, designing websites from there.
Wow, that is incredible. I love your story. I agree that is such a beautiful story and way of connecting. And I mean, my favorite part about the awards is just really that connection that you get with other artists and creatives, especially if you're not from an area where there's a lot of people who do what you do and love what you love. So that's amazing. That kind of launches me into my next question, which is about collaboration. Could you talk to me a little bit about who does what and how you figured out what those strengths are and how you work with each other?
Yeah, for sure. So as I said before, Rosie and I kind of went into this, and we were really lucky in the sense that we both had skill sets from our previous activities that we were pretty good at. So for example, I had previous experience in like designing a layout and also building a website from other activities that I did. Well, Rosie just got right into social media from the very beginning, and she was really good at promotion and getting the word out. And she also had great connections that she could help us make and get our magazine out there. Um, so the way we collaborate is we kind of collaborate over call. We usually call whenever we have a big project coming up, like we have to plan an issue, we have to open submissions, we have to release an issue, and we delegate work from there and usually do it on our own. One thing that's really great is that we're both high schoolers and we're both writers and we're both the same age and the same grade. So we really are able to understand what the other person is experiencing and able to be adaptable if one of us is more busy, because we both know what it's like to be a high schooler kind of managing this.
Hmm.
Especially with the 24-hour response times, as Rosie mentioned before.
It's impressive.
Um, that was so basically what that means is we have to respond to every single writing submission we get within 24 hours. And that was so much collaboration between the two of us because we could always like be on like our computers during class or lunch or like during passing times and be like, hey, should we accept this submission and be discussing it. Um, that was a wild time. But yeah, it was also great because it really did work.
Yeah, I remember like being in health class and it was after instructional time and I pulled out our like very big Excel sheet with all like the submissions and everything and someone next to me was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's this literary magazine I'm working for, I'm running." And yeah, it was like we would have to be very efficient with our time and like
Yeah.
working in between classes, during lunch, even rides home. Like we
Yeah.
would always be like reading a submission, responding to it, communicating with Caroline. I think something that I'm very grateful and happy for is that we're very understanding of each other's perspectives and we also value communication a lot. Like if we
Mm.
have a question or if we're making a decision about an issue or something new that we want to try out, we're always keeping the other person up to date with our ideas. And another aspect is also because we're both in school,
Yeah.
maybe one week I'm more busy than
Mm.
another week, and maybe another week Caroline is more busy with tests and quizzes and other projects. So we're always open to shifting responsibilities, communicating with each other. I think that's what's very beautiful. Also, another thing that Caroline mentioned was we each have like skills that the other person is more
Right.
hesitant about. Caroline's really good at like designing and compilation and everything, these stuff that I'm like hesitant about when I was thinking of starting a magazine. And I do more of the social media and outreach aspect that Caroline was initially hesitant about. So we really do fit each other's needs, and we also are very great communicators.
That's amazing. That you guys are so lucky that you just so happen to balance each other out in that way. So are you guys seniors in high school?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're both seniors.
Yep.
Also, so impressive that you're managing to balance this. I'm curious, how do you balance your own writing throughout this? Is that difficult?
Yeah, so for me, I would say writing was pretty difficult to balance because it's not like I'm doing math problems as in like, oh, in 1 hour I'll do 10 math problems. It's more of you kind of have to sit and process the ideas and kind of explore them on the paper. So what I would do is sometimes maybe before I go to sleep, I would set a dedicated amount of time, like maybe 30 minutes, to just think about story ideas and kind of anything that I was thinking out throughout the day, any small moments, any significant moments. And even if the end of 30 minutes, I got like 3 sentences down or only a paragraph, kind of the shaping of the story all happens in my mind. And that itself is a process of writing.
Yeah.
When people ask me what my writing process is, I would say more of it is actually thinking, and the exploring on the paper is coming after all this thinking. So even if throughout the week I don't have a whole like 5,000 word essay or story memoir written out, all the ideas and thoughts are processed and shaped in my mind. And I
Mhm.
think that's kind of how I balance school with writing, because I think something that was initially hard balancing these two things is if I'm constantly stressed about school or other factors, it's really hard to stay inspired in my creative endeavors. So I would just push all of that away for like 30 minutes or an hour and just process my thoughts and my writing on the paper.
That's awesome. I always think about that too, how so much of writing is the thinking process. And I think a lot of writers feel like if I'm not actively putting something on the page, I'm wasting time somehow. But you need that thinking, that daydreaming time to know so you don't have writer's block, like once you get to the page itself. So I
Yes.
love that. How about you, Caroline?
One thing that I do that's like a little different or like kind of sporadic is for me, writing is based on inspiration. Like whenever I have an idea, I have to write it down. And I've heard some like songwriters say that they write their songs in the way that like they just write down lyrics whenever they think of them on napkins in their notes apps whenever they can. And that's kind of what I do. So when I like think of something that I want to write, I write it immediately, no matter wherever it is, knowing that I can transfer it to like a doc or a notes apps at some point. And that's how I managed school and like the magazine and all this other stuff with writing.
Mhm.
I just take whatever time I can and do it immediately.
Awesome.
I also find that kind of inspiration strikes at very random times. Like sometimes I'm reading an article and I get an idea, or like I see something like at school or in my community and I get some idea, and I just write that down because I know I'm gonna forget it.
Hmm.
So the way I write is I write literally whenever I can in like very small increments and take some time and put it together, and somehow that works. Um,
Absolutely. So do you have like a long running notes app, like
oh
note
yeah,
folder?
I
You a
have like
paper writer?
I actually have like a Discord server where I text myself all of my ideas.
I
Um,
have that too.
oh my God, wait, that's
Wait,
okay,
I'm
yeah.
taking notes. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I
Oh
literally
my
have,
God.
yeah, because it's so nice because you can send links to articles, you can send photos, you can send other messages, you can, yeah.
Mm.
I read it back and I like copy and paste ideas from there. That's so funny. Okay, yeah.
That's so funny. I
Yeah.
didn't know this beforehand. This
I
is so
love
No,
that.
I didn't know she had one either. That's okay.
Creative collaboration was meant to be, clearly. I love that so much. So can you guys talk to me a little bit about your awards experience? What did you decide to write about? How was your experience just being there? And just how did it impact your overall confidence as a writer?
Yeah, so I remember that year, 2023, I was a sophomore and I got very passionate about memoir writing. So I wrote a lot about my personal experiences, my visit to my homeland, China, and kind of my interactions with my relatives. And I remember going home that day and realizing that the national medalists were like announced at like 4 p.m. CDT exactly. I remember this day so clearly. I remember logging onto the portal and I wasn't expecting anything because I was more still experimenting with memoir writing. And
Mhm.
saw the word gold medal. I immediately like shut my laptop, ran down the stairs, and started screaming like I got a gold medal to my mom. She started screaming back. It was very chaotic. And we drove to 85 degrees Celsius, which is a bakery nearby, and we got ourselves a slice of cake to celebrate.
Amazing.
I remember at school, some of the teachers heard the news and they started congratulating me. And I remember my chemistry teacher even reading the title of my memoir and trying to guess what it was about. And I think that's one of the most rewarding things about the awards is that it wasn't just confidence as a writer and feeling heard, but also bring more recognition of writing into my school because it's so STEM focused. And even though that's nice, I do want like writers and people who are interested in the arts to feel more welcomed. And I remember my English teacher, I would talk to her about the writing opportunities that I was fortunate to attend, and she would basically share those information to future underclassmen, which I'm so happy about because there's definitely someone who wants to explore writing or the arts and have these opportunities available to them and know these opportunities. I think that's what was very awarding for me.
Absolutely. That's such a good point.
Yeah.
Caroline, how about you?
Oh yeah, so basically, the first time that I won an award was when I was in eighth grade. It was during the pandemic, and basically what I had done was I just like we were online. I had nothing else to do, so I was just writing kind of about the things that I was experiencing, and it was a great way to not be bored and also work through isolation. And I ended up submitting it to Scholastic because I had heard of it through a few friends. And I wasn't really expecting much on awards day, but I remember I was like logging into the portal and my portal was glitching. Like it wasn't loading. I had like a friend who had also entered and she had gotten into the portal and she'd gotten a silver medal and she was like
Okay.
yelling about it. And I was like, my portal isn't loading. I don't know what I got. Um, so that went on for like 20 minutes, but
Oh,
it finally loaded and I looked over and it was like a gold medal. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. Like, who knew that writing could be recognized in this way? Because I didn't know that. And I don't think a lot of people know that when they start pursuing writing. They kind of see it as like this activity that you just do for fun, not really for a competition. It's not really looked at the same way as like, for example, like math competitions or science competitions are. And I think Scholastic is really good in that it's the way that a lot of young writers realize that they can take writing seriously and pursue it as a very serious activity during high school. Um, and another cool thing I remember about my awards experience was I didn't get to go to the ceremony in 2021 because it was COVID,
right.
but I finally got to go in 2023, and that's where I met Rosie. So I feel like it was good to get to
Meant
our
to
way.
be.
Yeah. And um, I think it was awesome because Classic definitely did give me the confidence to pursue writing very seriously. And it was because of them that I was able to find more like writing opportunities, writing contests, things like that. And it's the reason that I'm ingrained in the writing community today. And as Rosie said, I was also lucky to be able to bring that into my school. I had an English teacher back in middle school when I won, where like she was retired and like it was over the pandemic, but she emailed me and she was like, congrats, and she read my
Oh.
piece. It was really sweet, Miss Blyle. Shout out to you.
Shout out. You have to
Shout
shout
out.
out the teachers. Teachers are where so much of the confidence starts as well. So
Mhm.
I love that. So, terrible question to ask seniors. I remember being annoyed by this question. However, do you know what you're going to be majoring in? Are you going to be pursuing writing in college, or will you continue doing the literary magazine separately? What's the plan?
So for me specifically, I'm having a very open-minded perspective of what I'm going to pursue in college and in the future. But I know that no matter what I do, writing is going to be an integral part. Like I want to continue experimenting with new genres and forms.
Mhm.
I also want to continue like in college, there are also existing literary magazines in the school campus and also like journalism, other like writing activities that I want to be a part of. I think I want to expand my breadth of perspectives of different genres and meet new people. There are also a lot of peers that I met in other like in the Scholastic ceremony and writing workshops that have also started their own magazines, and I want to like share our experiences like with each other running
Yeah,
a magazine. That's mainly what I'm looking forward to.
amazing.
I think it's so cool because I know that no matter what career I choose in the future, there are so many principles of writing that you can apply to like your daily life. Like for
Yep.
example, I'm also really passionate about like policy. I'm in speech and debate, and I realize that like instead of just telling arguments as statistics, you can tell humanitarian stories and narratives. And that's an aspect of storytelling that you can bring into your life. And also like even in like when you're interacting with other people socially, you can use the perceptiveness and analysis that you have as a writer and that you put into your character and world building and extend those like to those around you. And like there are just so many principles of writing that I feel very lucky that I've learned. And that I'm really excited to be able to bring into my future career at college. Like Rosie, I hope to pursue like a lit mag in college as well because there are so many on-campus publications, which I'm really excited about because that's not something that you'd usually see at a high school.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
And but yeah, I think the intersection of writing is so broad with so many other things, and I'm really
Yeah.
excited about it.
I love that you guys know that and are aware of that right now as seniors, because that's something you hear so often from people like, oh, you're going to be an English major. Good luck getting a job, or anything that's kind of like putting down writers in that way. But you're so right. There are so many other careers, things that like maybe don't even exist yet, like 5 years from now, that will incorporate writing skills and verbal skills that you need to enter pretty much any career. Also, I was a part of my campus literary magazine, then editor-in-chief of my literary magazine, and it was the best, most amazing experience to really like be sitting around a table. I remember feeling like, oh, I get to talk about literary pieces all day. I want to do this for the rest of my life. Like, sign me up. It's such an amazing experience. So, have to do that. Do you have any advice for teens who maybe are feeling intimidated to enter the awards, feeling like maybe they shouldn't do it? What would you say to any of those teens?
Okay. I think to anyone on the fence, just remember that this is one of many contests that receives hundreds of thousands of submissions. And in that process, there are legitimately so many factors that go into what makes a winning piece on like a regional and national level that you won't know what happened to your piece until it makes it out from the other end. So even if you think your work doesn't meet a standard, art is subjective, so maybe it meets someone else's standards of what they value in art. You also never really know who's going to see something in your work that you can't see. I think a lot of creators can relate to this, but I'm the type to enter like a lot of pieces, like 6 to 8 long prose pieces per award cycle. And I feel like it's always the ones that I least expect to win that win. Like I was nominated for the American Voices Award in my region in 2024, and that piece I almost didn't submit because I was like, this is too bland. It's like really incomplete. I actually was able to work on it because the Scholastic deadline was pushed back last year, but I thought it was so bland, but I submitted it because I was like, what could go wrong? And look what happened. So if you submit and you don't win, there's no harm done. But even if you look at it risk reward, the risk of submitting is so like it's non-existent. Like no one's gonna know if you don't
Yeah.
win. But the reward of getting an award is so vast and it can really inspire you. So definitely
Yeah,
submit.
that is a perfect example. And so often as writers, we're so close to what we're writing about that it's impossible to take an objective stance and really evaluate it. So to get that other opinion, talk about a confidence boost. I'm sure that is one. Rosie, how about you?
Yeah, so for me in 2023, I was very into memo writing. So a lot of the things I submitted was heavily leaned towards memo writing. I'm also like Caroline, where I would write a lot of pieces that I'm inspired about and just submit them all to Scholastic because you never know what's going to happen. You never know what kind of message is going to be reached to the readers. For example, when I'm writing my own stories about my personal life, I know what happened because I've experienced it, but maybe someone else reading it from another perspective would have another message
Mhm.
reaching across them. I think that's what's very beautiful about the awards. Also with their gallery, because I remember so many people in my school telling me like, I've read your piece in the gallery and it's so inspiring and etc. And they talk about their own inspirations, their own upbringings. And I'm like, this is so beautiful. This is so inspiring. I think going to I remember Scholastic one time had a like a panel or a meeting where some of the judges would talk about how they look at work. And I think
Mhm.
something very big that stuck with me was one judge kind of put it in a perspective of imagine if you're writing about like a huge theme, like maybe about love. There's probably going to be like 1,000 other writers writing about love because this is such a big competition with so many pieces. So you definitely don't want to get boiled down into, oh, what would the judge like to see? Or what would the person on the other end like to see? But it's more of just what makes me feel inspired? What is a story that I want to tell from my heart? And I think from there, that's where a lot of the originality comes in. I think when I was writing my memoirs, I was more focused onto telling the stories inspired from my grandparents' story and from their
Mhm.
perspective than kind of focusing on like, oh, what would that a judge like to read? Because you don't know who your judges are, you don't know their backgrounds, you don't know what message they're going to take from this piece of writing. So I think whatever piece that you want to submit, again, what Caroline said, the risk is basically non-existent. The reward is so rewarding, not just the medal itself or the key itself, it's more of the connections and the community you build through this.
Absolutely. I love what you said about, there could be a million people out there writing the exact same thing you're writing, but nobody is going to tell your story like you tell your story. That's even beyond the Scholastic Awards. That's being a writer in general, is remembering that you as an author, you are what makes your work special. So I think that's a really important lesson to take away from that. So before we move on to our fun little hot seat segment, I just want to know, what are your goals for the future? If you could dream as big as you possibly wanted, what are you doing like 10 years from now, 15 years from now?
Oh my God.
That's difficult. I think obviously I've always wanted to do like a job or career that involves writing or analysis of some degree because I feel like that's what I'm strong at and that's what I really enjoy doing. Um, and I think one thing that the Scholastic Awards did very well was their impact is extremely widespread. It's probably one of the most well-known writing competitions in the entire country. And they've given a lot of career inspiration to a lot of students who might be in areas where the literary arts aren't very well regarded. Especially for those who come from like a cultural background that we do, a lot of factors like STEM are definitely prioritized. Um, but I do think that the awards and writing in general have been able to inspire so many people to realize that they want to pursue humanities-based careers, and I'm definitely one of those people. So I'm like honestly not totally sure, but whatever it is, I know I want it to be something writing based, and that's in part due to the experience that I had with the award.
Amazing.
Yes, for me, I'm also pretty similar to Caroline in the sense that I also am also passionate about public policy. I also do speech and debate. We
Awesome.
have a lot of similarities. I was so shocked by that. But I also really want to pursue a humanities-based career. I think a big long-term project I really want is I want to write like a long memoir and kind of like work with editors, designers, like having a cover, having like a really nice memoir, like a long memoir, like maybe like even a chapbook. I think that those are like long-term projects that I'm always building towards by continuing to write and writing these smaller stories and slowly compiling them into like a larger story. Um, I'm not super sure like exactly what I want to do, like paved out
Of
future,
course.
but I think whatever career I go into, it's going to be more humanities leaned, and I want to continue writing, whether that's in clubs, in
Yep.
classes I'm taking, in literary maggot communities. I want to continue all of that.
Amazing. And honestly, the best part about college is you could stumble into a class that just so happened to be free. And that one class is what paves out what you want to do for the rest of your life. Like you never know who you're going to meet, what's going to inspire you. So you have an amazing 4 years ahead of you, which is so exciting. Um, Also, actually, before we move on to hot seat, anything else you want to say about your magazine? Anything to people who might want to submit? Anything at all like that?
Yeah, so I would want to say that we're currently open, or maybe when this is out, it might be different, but we're currently open for issue 5 Aurora submissions. And I would say any sort of work you write, even if it's like overnight you had a big epiphany and huge inspiration and you wrote something one night and you want to submit it to us, we'll definitely respond. We'll definitely read it. We're so open to all genres, all forms. And even if we're not open for submissions, we're in between issues or you don't have anything to submit, we'd highly recommend reading any of our issues, specifically one of our recent projects, AAPI, for AAPI Heritage Month of May. We basically compiled and designed, and we had a writing contest for like young writers of AAPI descent, and we had an anthology called Home Rewritten out in ebook and physical copy. I actually have it with me right now.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So definitely check it out. Some of the artists and writers in here are also the winners of the awards themselves. So be sure to support them if you stumble
Yes.
across it in real life too.
That's
I
awesome.
guess one thing to anyone who might be considering submitting or anyone who might be listening, as a young writer, it can be really easy to feel like you're kind of shouting into a void. Where like you're writing, you're not really getting a response, you're just like venting your feelings, you're writing whatever. But just remember that no matter if you submit or not, or what you submit to, there's always going to be someone who's going to be reading and processing and appreciating your work. And that was an aspect of us wanting to implement the 24-hour feedback system because we wanted writers to know that they're being acknowledged for the things that they do. where some other contests or magazines can take a really long time to get back to writers. And we want to make sure that wherever you are in your writing journey, you're being recognized for that. Um, and I think one great aspect of teen magazines overall is we're all trying to help youth uplift their voices and get their work out into the world. And our magazine specifically focuses on publishing work that symbolizes coming of age experiences. Because when a lot of people write, their messaging is super profound and well articulated. When you look at the writers that we look up to, we're like, oh my God, they're so good. But not much emphasis is put on how they got there. No one is born articulate and no one is born a prodigy. And we want writers to be able to focus on their journeys and how their adolescent and coming of age experiences have shaped these revelations that they're having as older writers. And that's one of the main things of our magazine. And that's something that I think we did very well with the theming. So I'm excited about that.
Amazing. Well, please keep in mind to our audience that we will have everything linked in the show notes, as well as your last issue, all information on how to submit. So we'll make sure that everybody has that available. Welcome to Hot Seat. This is the segment where we ask our guests a speed round of questions about life, creativity, and everything in between. Are you guys ready? Okay. Would you rather write in a coffee shop or at home?
For me, I would probably rather write at home because I'm used to like my bedroom, and like I either write on my desk and then I move to my bed and I move to downstairs, or I move to my backyard, because I'm so used to environment. I get very easily distracted by like new things in my environment. So if I'm in a coffee shop and it's either like pretty busy or pretty like the cups like clanking against each other, etc., and other conversations, I will very easily get distracted by that. Rather, when I'm at my home, everything's familiar to me, so I can really just focus on my writing, blast music in my ears or no music, etc., and that's where I find most of my inspiration.
I definitely think at home, because I write the best at night. I have the best inspiration at night, and you can really write at night in a coffee shop. So
Go-to snack while writing.
I really like yogurt and granola. Sorry, that just came to my mind because lately I've been getting like, there's like Chobani, like honey yogurt, and then there's granola, and I put like some berries in there.
Amazing.
Also a matcha latte. I'm very into matcha right now. I'm in my matcha phase.
You need a good drink while writing. That's my...
Yes.
I don't always eat while writing because it can get hard when you type, but my go-to drink is always iced coffee. Every single writer is gonna say this, but iced coffee is so good. Like I can't. It's great.
Ebooks or physical books?
I like physical books. The reason being is that ebooks, sometimes when I stare at it for a long time, my eyes either get tired. Also physical books, I can like hold it and kind of like flip through the pages. I think the reason why I like physical books is because as a child, I would only have physical books, and I would just remember like flipping through the books, analyzing the pictures, like children's picture books, and also like the words, etc. I kind of like physical books because when I flip through pages, I kind of remind myself of like me as a child flipping through these like children's books.
I think physical books, first of all, because they're better for my eyes, and also because I think it feels different to hold like this kind of tangible book that has such an amazing story in it, and it's like a different vibe when reading it. I feel, I don't know if like that makes any sense.
It does.
But, and I also did read a lot as a child, and I remember like I would always have like stacks and stacks of books from like my school library, and it was definitely over the checkout limit. But I just remember carrying those everywhere and like being in like waiting rooms and restaurants and always reading. And physical books, like even though they're harder to carry around nowadays, they're still, I think, they just remind, like, it's just what I've always done.
When are you most creative? Morning, afternoon, or night?
So for me, it's like either in the like very early morning or at like very late in the night. It's like those are the two main times where I'm very inspired. Maybe like in the very early morning because I just had like a dream or I had some sort of moment when I wake up, or late at night when I'm like thinking about something and I suddenly get an idea, and like Caroline, I have to write it down. So I either experiment it or write it out in the morning, or I just lose some sleep and write overnight. It's definitely worth it.
Yep.
I think night, because night is when most people are most reflective, and when you're reflective, you tend to write more, be more inspired, and that's, I think that's what I write.
The lesson here is that writers need to be tired in order to produce creative work, whether it's early morning or night.
Yeah.
And our last question is, where can our audience find you? You guys have an Instagram, anywhere where people can come and check you out?
Yeah, so definitely check out our website, fleetingdazemag.com. And we're most active on Instagram, so definitely shoot us a message or you can send us an email. We're going to be checking those often. So those are like two areas. I think another place that people contact us is on our website. There's a contact page, so definitely
Right.
send us, fill out that little contact thing, and we'll definitely respond to you.
And we also
Perfect.
have Instagram and TikTok at the username, it's just Fleeting Daze Mag.
Yep.
It's the same username on
Amazing.
both sites. We do post there, so check us out.
Next up, we're chatting with Rowana Miller, the executive director of Cosmic Writers, a nonprofit that offers multiple pathways for children to experience creative writing programs. Rowana graduated from the University of Pennsylvania, and her debut novel, Secrets of the Blue Hand Girls, published by Sourcebooks, is coming out in fall 2025. Hope you enjoy this fascinating conversation with Rowana.
Hi, my name is Rowana Miller. I am the founder and executive director of Cosmic Writers, a creative writing education nonprofit. Our goal is to make sure that all children have the tools, knowledge, and opportunities to pursue creative writing. And this is something that I started working on during the pandemic
Mhm.
and that has since grown into a full nonprofit. Sorry, this is something that I started working on when I was a college student during the pandemic
Right.
that has now grown into an independent nonprofit. And then personally, in my life outside of Cosmic Writers, I am also a writer. I have my debut novel coming out in 2025.
Amazing. I'm so curious to know about the origin story of Cosmic Writers. How, as a college student, especially, how on earth did you balance like your academic life, your college student life with starting this nonprofit? It's so amazing to me.
Thank you so much. That's very kind of you to say. It worked out because I didn't set out trying to start a nonprofit.
Okay.
In 2020, I was a sophomore, and that semester, when everything shut down, I think that, like a lot of people, I was feeling generally pretty powerless about what to do in the face of global crisis.
Yep.
And at the time, I was a sociology major with minors in creative writing and urban education. And I thought, okay, what skills do I have that might alleviate some of the mass depression of this period of time? And
Mm.
so I applied for a small grant from the Kelly Writers House at the University of Pennsylvania, my undergrad institution. The Kelly Writers House is a community hub for writing in and around the Penn community.
Mhm.
And I applied for a small grant from the Kelly Writers House to start a virtual creative writing camp. And initially, I just intended that to be a way to provide something engaging for kids to do over that summer. If you remember, a lot of the camps that were going online were like theater camps and sports camps,
Yeah.
and there was just a lot of struggle to find something that made sense to do from the computer. And so when we opened up signups for that camp, we got 150 signups within 24 hours. And that was the first sign that there was this enormous need for creative writing education.
Mhm.
And of course, I mean, of course, a lot of it was due to the need of the pandemic. But what parents and teachers were telling me was that this was the first time that their kids had had high quality, accessible, free creative writing education.
Yeah.
And that did not come as a surprise to me.
Mhm.
I grew up middle class in New York, very serious about writing from the time that I was very little. I won Scholastic Awards every year that I was eligible to submit to them. Um, and I didn't have consistent creative writing education until I got to college.
Right.
So then I started looking into what the options were for creative writing education for kids. And it seemed like there were two primary categories of that. There were private tutors,
Mhm.
which were only accessible if you had the means.
Yeah.
And there were local brick and mortar creative writing nonprofit hubs, which were incredibly impactful, but you only have 3 or 4 of those per major city if you're lucky.
Mhm.
And if you live outside of a major city, if your local library offers programming, then that's your best option, but there really aren't institutions available. And so that was when I started thinking, okay, this virtual creative writing camp, word camp, is great, but it's a program when what you really need is an organization.
Yeah.
And so the Writers House was very, very supportive in helping me to transition WordCamp into a program of what would become Cosmic Writers, the nonprofit. And 5 years later, Cosmic Writers has evolved quite a bit in what we offer. We still are running WordCamp in summer 2024. We wrapped up our 5th year of that.
Amazing.
We also offer one-on-one creative writing mentorships. We run cohorts in the fall and spring, and those are free and open to the public, same which WordCamp is as well. And then after experimenting with different forms of just ways to get creative writing education in front of as many kids as possible, because beyond the kids who are already self-selecting writers, there are about 2/3 of kids who don't have access to regular creative writing education, and so they don't often even have a way to know if that's something that they would want to do or a way that they would be motivated to improve their literacy and their communication skills. What we have settled on is publishing and distributing a series of creative writing activity books. We published the first of those last June. It's called the Monster Building Handbook, and it's a middle grade book that takes kids through the process of creating an original monster character that can face off against the greatest monster hunter of our generation, Mortimer Fearborn. And we are working with teachers. We've got a corresponding curriculum. In addition to making the book available for individual kids and families, we're working with teachers and after-school educators and community center directors in order to utilize the materials to just get creative writing in front of as many kids as possible.
Wow, that is incredible. I have so many questions. And honestly, as one of those kids like you who grew up from the earliest ages knowing I wanted to also be a writer, I always searched for something exactly what you're talking with. So I'm like, on behalf of all those kids, I thank you because it's such a need, and it's amazing that you created this. I guess my first question is how has this exceeded your expectations from when you first started it? Could you ever have foreseen this becoming such a part of your life?
Oh, absolutely not. I assumed that first summer, I thought that was going to be a season-long project.
Right.
My background was very much on the writing side. I never saw myself as a business person.
Yeah.
And now this is my full-time job. This has been my full-time
Amazing.
job since I graduated college.
Hmm.
And so it's a very different way of seeing myself than I ever expected to. Growing up, I always thought that I would have something to do with writing in my career. My first thought was journalist. As I got a bit older, I thought, okay, lawyer. But as things have turned out, this is where the need has been in my life,
Hmm.
and I have been in an unexpected position to be able to try to meet it. My university also had a grant for social impact ventures,
Mm.
and my co-founder and I won that at the end of our senior year. And that was what gave us the startup funding to be able to work full-time on the nonprofit right after we graduated.
Uh-huh.
And that's something that I just, even until my senior year, I assumed that that sort of grant was not meant for somebody like me who was more in the arts space. I
Right.
thought that that was for inventors and for business majors. But as things have happened, generally in the community around me, there has been a consensus that this is a need that has to be fulfilled. And the more Cosmic Writers has grown, the more people seem inclined to continue investing in it. And
Mhm.
so I'm delighted to be able to do this full time, although it is definitely not what I would have expected 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
Although I have now run into a lot of former teachers through my work,
Oh.
and nobody is surprised that this is what I'm doing. People keep saying the equivalent of, wow, if you had told me when you were in middle school this is what you're going to be doing, I would have said, oh, of course,
I love
which
that.
is very sweet.
Oh, that's the best. I find that especially with people who work in the children's lit space, that so much of it really is like honoring your childhood self in that way. So I love that so much. In your opinion, why is creative writing education so important for kids beyond just the standard r- literacy is so important, obviously, but other skills like communication, like why is it so important?
This is my favorite thing to talk about. Thank you so much for asking.
Amazing.
I think that creative writing education is one of the most quietly subversive things that you can offer to kids. Because through creative writing education, what you're saying is, I want to hear what you have to say. And kids never get to hear that, particularly kids from underserved backgrounds. So when you are telling kids that you want to hear the stories that they have to tell and equipping them with the skills to be able to tell those stories effectively, you're helping them to change their own circumstances. You learn the tangible skills that will help you no matter what job you pursue. And you are also giving kids you're honoring the fact that they are important and that they can change the world around them to be the kind of world they want to see.
That is such a beautiful answer. And you've got to imagine like how many kids come from a home where their words aren't appreciated and their words aren't respected. So to come to an organization like yours where you're told like, and similar to the Scholastic Awards, you know, you're told that your words are valuable and important, that's beautiful. Speaking of the Scholastic Awards, we are the Scholastic Awards podcast. So I have to ask you about how your experience at the Scholastic Awards were all through high school. And how did your award experience impact your trajectory moving forward, both as a writer and business owner, all of the above?
Oh, it was totally transformative. I remember when I was 12 and I remember I won 2 silver keys in the New York Regional Awards. I remember running down the hall of my apartment and screaming because I mean, I had been told growing up that I was a good writer.
Mhm.
My grandmother is a high school English teacher. My mother is a creative director, and so writing is something that was very valued in my family. Um, and my family members told me that I was good at it, but there's a difference between your family members who love you telling you that you're good at
Absolutely.
something and an external body that has no motivation
Mhm.
to pump you up
Yep.
saying that you're good at something. And so winning the Scholastic Awards was really essential to building up my confidence in my writing. It's something that, I mean, it was the first time that somebody in that position had told me that I was a good writer. So I think that the Scholastic, I remember I said I looked forward to submitting every year. I looked forward to going through all the writing I'd done over the past year and choosing what I was most proud of. It was also a really lovely opportunity to reflect on how I had grown over the past year. I started writing my first novel very shortly after winning my first Scholastic Award.
Wow.
I am not, I think that was probably one of the reasons why I felt like I could start working on something that I had said since I was very little that I had always wanted to do. It was great. I'm very, very grateful to the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards.
That's amazing. So you must have been like what, 14 when you started writing your first book, or how old were
I
you?
was 12.
Oh, you were 12. Oh my,
I
that's crazy.
I won the award in January or something of
Yeah.
seventh grade, and then I started working on my first novel in the spring of my seventh grade. Of course, that novel was not the one that will be coming out in 2025. It's been a lot from
I'm
there
yes,
to
and
now.
we'll cover that soon.
But it was the process of that was when I started thinking that I went from saying someday I will write a novel to,
Yeah.
oh, actually I can write a novel now.
Absolutely. So, for so many kids, the Scholastic Awards really is the very first time that they're submitting any piece of creative work out there. What would you say to teens who are hesitant or fearful to put their work out there? Well, any words of wisdom?
Um, my first answer is just that there is no downside. You don't have to tell anybody that you're submitting.
Yeah.
If you don't win, then you get to be proud of yourself for taking a chance on yourself. And if you do win, then you get to run around your apartment screaming.
So true.
And then otherwise, I think that honestly that submitting it's one of the kindest things that you can do for yourself because no matter what happens, you're saying that you value yourself and your words. And I'm working with a few young writers right now to gear them up to submit to the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards for 2025, actually.
Oh my gosh.
And the way that we have been talking about the contest is less about less about the goal of winning and more about having some external parameters to help you to focus in on your writing. Because when you're writing for yourself and there are no deadlines, I think
Right.
that sometimes it's harder to set goals. And so being able to have the very tangible, I want to write a 2,000 word short story
Yeah.
by December 1st, I think is kind of like the motivation that can help you to prioritize writing in your personal life.
Absolutely. I would not be able to write without self-imposed deadlines. So that is such a true point. Um, so moving on to your writing life, your debut novel is coming out fall 2025. Congratulations. That's like amazing. That must feel so great. I'm curious to know, how does your writing life intersect with Cosmic Writers? How do you balance it? And what has the publishing process been like? I know you just got your book deal a few months ago, I think, but just how has the earlier starting points of that been?
It has been more difficult to balance than I thought that it would,
Okay.
because what I have found is that writing a novel and running an organization occupy similar parts of my brain, in
Hmm.
that I think that the best solutions that I have to both business strategy problems and plot problems, I get when I'm taking walks or I'm in the shower.
Yeah.
And I can only think about one of those things at the time, and I only have so many walks and showers per day.
Uh-huh.
So I have decided that going forward, I am not allowed to have both business as top priority and novel as top priority at the same time.
Okay.
That I learned this because I just finished up an enormous rewrite.
Mhm.
I submitted it to my editor on Monday. It's Wednesday right now. And so over the past month or so, for the first time since graduating college a little over 2 years ago, Cosmic Writers has not been the thing that has been occupying all the corners of my mind. And it's been a very strange feeling. I really don't like feeling like I have to, like, one of them is going to suffer because
Mhm.
I'm prioritizing the other one over it. I drafted the novel when I was in college. I queried, had a very long submission process, and then the contract process took a while as well. Even
Okay.
though my announcement was a couple of months ago,
Oh, okay.
I got the call about the book deal about a year ago, actually, a little under a year
Oh,
ago.
amazing. Okay, great.
So it's because of all the administrative stuff, I had not been writing seriously again, on working on that project seriously again, until pretty recently. So we will see how things go going forward. I'm very excited about the publicity phase of my novel because
Mhm.
I think that doing the marketing for Cosmic Writers has made me a much more confident speaker, and has generally made me much better at knowing how to present creative things. And so I think that that's going to be a lot of fun. Although I'm also kind of apprehensive because part of the reason, part of the way that I've gotten comfortable with my more public facing work for Cosmic Writers is that I get to shove a bunch of really talented children in front of cameras and say, wow, look how great they are. And self-promotion is going to be very different.
Yeah, for sure. When it's your face out there and it's not just
Exactly.
the organization, that I never thought about that. That must be like an interesting switch up. Um, I'm curious, has, selling your book and entering into the world as an author, has it changed the way that you talk to kids about writing at all? Or has it only made you more passionate about what you do, or somewhere in between?
It definitely has made me feel like I know what I'm talking about in a way that I I think I did a good job of faking it before, but
Not fake.
I think that it's probably more convincing now. We have a lot of kids, especially in the cosmic coaching program, the mentorship program, who are working on novels. They
Yeah.
remind me a lot that this is what I would have wanted when I was in my teens and it makes me so beyond happy to know that kids who are in the position that I was in 10 years ago are now coming to Cosmic Writers and getting mentors and accountability and consistent feedback while they're working on big projects like that. And occasionally, our young novelists and their families will come to me and they'll say, hey, I've been working on this novel in Cosmic Coaching. Now I'm thinking about publishing and I would like to explore my options. And being able to say, okay, I was exactly where you were,
Yeah.
and now I have a book deal. I feel like I am better equipped to be able to give feedback and to help kids figure out their next steps than I was before. There was a period of time when I felt like I had been writing seriously for about 10 years and I didn't have a book deal to show for it. And I felt like, well, who am I to be giving these kids advice about how to be serious about their writing when this isn't a milestone that I've been able to achieve yet? And while, of course, things like book deals are very dependent on luck and what the market happens to want and who happens to read your book and what connections you have, that's another thing. I was not aware at all until about how connection driven the publishing industry was. I cold queried and I got my agent the old fashioned way, I guess you would call it. But I now have seen that realistically that doesn't account for all the ways that people get their agents, and that a lot of the time the reason that current authors started out as editors or agents themselves is not a coincidence.
Absolutely.
And so, but with all of that aside, I still felt like there was a little bit of disingenuousness to me saying, oh, there's so much hope. There's so much hope for you in the publishing world, while not achieving my personal goal. And so I feel a lot better talking to families about that process.
Absolutely. And I think like even just for, families to witness firsthand how you've worked on your trajectory in your writing life. I mean, that must be really inspiring for other people to see you do it in a way that is quote unquote the old fashioned way, which I think most people, that's how it happens. Before we move on, so we have a fun segment basically called Hot Seat, which is super simple, like whatever answer comes to you, just say at the top of your mind. Before we move on to that, do you have any advice for teens or young people who maybe they have an idea similarly to you and Cosmic Writers? They want to start a nonprofit or they have a business idea. What words of wisdom do you have for teens when it comes to taking themselves seriously and in a world where so many people don't take teens seriously?
I am a big fan of taking teens seriously, and I'm a big fan of external parameters. I think that it is really hard to motivate yourself to do something, especially when you have so many other pressures. And so I think that one of the best things you can do for yourself is get into a social entrepreneurship program. I know a lot of nonprofits that offer social entrepreneurship programming for teens who are in that situation, who have a really good idea, who are serious about pursuing it, but who may not have the knowledge or the resources or a clear path for how to get started, or accountability. Because I think that one of the best parts of those programs is that you have a coach or a mentor or a cohort of other people who are also pursuing their projects working alongside you. So I think that that's my number one piece of advice. And my other piece of advice is to consume information about starting a business in whatever way that works best for you. For me, when I was first starting Cosmic Writers, I listened to the podcast Nonprofits Are Messy by Joan Gary constantly. I spent about a month in the summer between my junior and senior years of college taking walks around New York and listening to this podcast, because I didn't have a foundation of knowledge to know really what questions to ask. And so I just wanted to pour in however much information I could handle. And so I recommend that one podcast specifically if you
Right.
want to start a nonprofit. But just in general, whether you consume information best by reading or by podcasting or by watching YouTube videos, I think that you should focus on the acquisition of a foundation of knowledge first, and then figure out your next steps after that.
Absolutely. I love that. I totally agree. That was me 100%. Like when I knew I wanted to go into children's lit, I just looked at every podcast available. Like I just wanted to soak up as much information as possible. And that's great advice. Get ready for Hot Seat. Are you ready?
Sure, I am.
Okay, would you rather have a writing retreat by the beach or in a city?
In a city.
What's your go-to writing beverage?
Hot chocolate.
Comedy or drama?
Comedy.
Would you rather write a book entirely in emojis or write a book backwards?
Backward.
If you could write in one genre forever, what would your genre be?
Urban fantasy.
Are you a plotter or a pantser?
I used to be a pantser, realized that didn't end up working for me, and I ended up in a modified state where I end up writing a very loose outline at the beginning, and then I fill it in chapter by chapter, and so my outline is always a chapter or two ahead of where I am in the draft.
I love that because I do the exact same thing. I call that
cool.
like a plantser. It's like there's room for interpretation. Do you write with music or with silence?
I write in coffee shops.
Okay.
With white.
Perfect. And our last question is, where can our audience find you? Where can our audience find Cosmic Writers if they'd like to get involved? Where can we find that?
I don't have an especially online author presence yet. It's something that I have to work on in the next year. With Cosmic Writers, we are available at cosmicwriters.org, on all social media at Cosmic Writers. With me, you can always email me at rmiller@cosmicwriters.org. My email is also on the website. And I really would like people to email me. I really like talking to young writers. It is the best part of my job. And I would really like to hear what you're working on. If you want advice on the publication process, if you want advice on starting a business, talk to me.
Amazing. Well, you heard it here first. I know that if this was available when I was younger, I would be emailing you in an instant. So our listeners should absolutely do that. Rowana, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. This was so amazing. And I wish you the best of luck on your novel, and I can't wait to read it.
Thank you so much. That's really, really kind of you. And thank you so much for having me.
And our final conversation today is with Luke Hodges, a documentary producer based in New York City. A Scholastic Awards alum, Luke is also a 2023 Alumni Microgrant winner, which helped Luke fund Crashing Out, a documentary short set at the height of the AIDS crisis. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Luke Hodges.
My name is Luke Hodges. I am a filmmaker. Right now, I primarily work in documentary, though I have some not so secret aspirations of also working in scripted, and I'm, for the most part, producing for other directors. So a film called Cashing Out that I produced with my producing partner, Matt Nadell, who I also think is a Scholastic alum.
Oh,
Though you guys might have to fact check me on that.
okay.
He and I have a film that we produced for the New Yorker magazine called Cashing Out that will premiere in the spring of next year. And then another that we have done together called Odd Man In that will be on PBS next fall.
Awesome.
And yeah, we tend to focus on queer American stories and kind of histories that have been relegated to the margins of the margins. So, for instance, Cashing Out is about this long forgotten AIDS crisis era phenomenon where gay men, mostly gay men who are facing their mortality, would sell their life insurance to investors in exchange for a cut of their death benefit to live their final days on. And it was a hugely controversial industry within the community that was impacted and also in the broader culture at the time, that all of whom, before they kind of understood the gravity financially of what it meant to be living with this at that time terminal condition, um, the, the vitriol was so intense, but it really transformed for the better a lot of the lives of the people who were able to sell, in effect, a stake in their life. So I think we tend to be drawn to those moral, ethical gray areas that,
Mm.
particularly with stories that don't have a clear hero, that are sort of everyday people grappling with their contending with and embracing or rejecting compromise. And I think people in compromised moral positions tend to interest us.
Mhm.
So that that's my kind of meandering elevator pitch. But the too long didn't read of that is I'm a documentary film producer.
Amazing. Okay, so I want to hear so much about your film in a bit, but before we get there, could you just talk a little bit about kind of how you started and how, of course, the Scholastic Awards impacted where you ended up and how you got into documentary filmmaking in the first place?
Yes. So I'm from South Carolina originally, as you might be able to tell from my accent. And I had the great fortune of going to this amazing school in South Carolina called the Governor's School for the Arts and Humanities. And it's really amazing that it exists because it is a public residential arts high school. So students starting, it depends on your art area, but typically starting around junior year will go live in Greenville, South Carolina on campus and study for 2 years in one of five art areas. I think there are more art areas now than when I was a student there, but when I went, the available options were creative writing, drama, visual art, music, and dance. And I went for creative writing. Um, every year, the kind of fixture of second semester was applying to Scholastic
Mm.
and sharing work. And usually because it was such an intense, it was like, to give a sense of how intense this program was, it was basically like going to a Master of Fine Arts for 2 years at the age of 16. You're
Wow.
like doing workshops, creative writing workshops 5 days a week for like 3 and 4 hours in the afternoon after your academics are complete in the mornings. And so we were taking short story workshops, poetry workshops, creative
Wow.
nonfiction.
That's so unique for a high school. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing that it exists and that it's all subsidized by the state government. And anyone who is committed and willing and demonstrates, I think, a degree of aptitude in their area, it's just an amazing launch pad for people.
Mhm.
And so our like the kind of objective we would work toward every the end of every year is like submitting portfolios and individual pieces to Scholastic, for the competition. And my senior year, I submitted a portfolio for the general writing portfolio, like the national competition, and I won. So I was one of the like I think 10 people selected for the top prize that year. This was in 2011.
Mhm.
And what was really special about that year too is that my best friend from my same writing cohort, Victoria Ford, who is also a working artist now today,
Mhm.
she also won a general writing portfolio gold. So we both got to go to New York and accept the award on the stage at Carnegie Hall. And it was, I think, for both of us, just one of the most consequential moments of our, not just our creative lives, but of our lives, period.
Mhm.
And that early recognition outside of your immediate community of friends and family and teachers was so supremely validating to both
Mhm.
of us, I think. And really, in throughout my whole adult life and in moments of like creative self-doubt, that knowing that that happened so early on has carried me through with confidence that what I'm working on could be and may very well be of interest to people and is worth an audience's attention. So that I can't overstate how important that experience was to me and how still it's like impacted my life for the better. But yeah, that was sort of my scholastic
Amazing. So,
trajectory.
did that impact at all, like where you ended up going to college after high school, or impact like what you kind of wanted to do from there? How did it impact you directly, right after?
Well, a direct impact is it helped me pay for my first semester of college, which was amazing. And I started at Kenyon College in Ohio, which is
Beautiful campus.
yes, beautiful campus, like famously writing oriented
Yeah.
school. And so I transferred back to University of South Carolina and finished there.
Okay.
Um, but it it I think that encouragement gave me more. I ended up majoring in English and
Mhm.
studying more, and I think it was just even more gave me even more certainty that this is something I should invest my time and attention in,
Yeah.
and that this was a skill that was worthy of honing more. And at that time, I had always loved film from a very early age, and but I'd sort of set that aside after my time at governor's school because I had encountered so much great writing, and I thought I wanted to be this kind of multi-hyphenate short story writer, poet, novelist, which
Mhm.
I still kind of want to be at some point.
Mhm.
But in college, like film started creeping back into my life, and I started working at a film festival in my hometown in Columbia, South Carolina, where I was in school at the time, and carrying that writing ability into like a arts and curatorial environment was mutually beneficial to the people I was working for, and then also to me, and meeting these filmmakers who I am now like still collaborating with years after that first encounter is this amazing festival that no longer exists called the Indie Grits Festival in South Carolina. And yeah, so it again, that encouragement and validation um just made me want to pursue any kind of writing with seriousness and effort and attention. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
So, one thing about this episode in particular that I really want to stress to young writers is just how many different opportunities there are if you have the skill of being a writer. There's not the conventional, I'm going to be an author and that's the path, and that's the only thing that you can do with a writing degree. So, in your opinion, how has writing kind of served you in your career in maybe unconventional ways that teens maybe aren't thinking of right now?
I think that in my case, so I'm very lucky because I did kind of get my wish. Like I am making a living as a writer. In my day job outside of producing documentary work, I am a copywriter, so
Okay.
writing advertising and sort of more business writing stuff. That that work and honing that craft, which is a it's distinct from the kind of creative work that Scholastic supports, but it is of a piece with it in the sense of like it has to be economical, it has to be
Mhm.
engaging, it has to grab people's attention,
Yep.
and it has to be persuasive. And um I think that there's a, I guess, broader application, as you were acknowledging, like there isn't, I think for a very small percentage of people working, making art are doing it full time,
Mhm.
and an even smaller percentage are doing it full time immediately out of high school or
Yeah.
college, their MFA program.
Mhm.
And I guess I would stress like do not be discouraged if you're not immediately on like the National Book Award long list at the age of 23.
Yep.
Uh, and which I think, when you have that early recognition too, as wonderful and grateful as I am for Scholastic too, there's a sense of like, well, what am I going to achieve next? It's going to be, another
Oh,
big,
true.
and
Yeah.
and then when that doesn't happen immediately, I think you feel like you failed to some degree. But
That is
I
such a good point that actually nobody has brought up so far in my interviews is the fact that there is that kind of immediate pressure, which is both an amazing thing and probably an emotionally kind of difficult thing. Like, how would you say as an artist, and that continues like throughout your career, like you achieve something and then you're working towards something else. How do you keep your momentum going and just your belief in yourself overall?
I think sometimes the momentum ceases, and that's okay. Like I actually had a long time in I'm 30, I will be 32 in January, and I won that prize from Scholastic when I was 18.
Mhm.
And I think early in college, like 18 to 22, 23, I wrote a bit sporadically, creatively for myself. But for the most part, I was beginning to write for other people and in like a marketing and advertising context and in a curatorial, like film festival kind of context. And while that was gratifying and it was making me a living, I sort of felt like, well, I guess my creative life is over, which is crazy to think about now because I'm like, I was a kid. There's so much of life and discovery and other things ahead. It's sort of nuts to preemptively just be like, well, I'm not a Pulitzer nominee, so guess I need to hang up the spurs and give this charade up.
Yep.
Um, and so I guess I'd say like sometimes the momentum ceases for a moment, and that's okay. And I think in that seeming vacuum of things, there's room for discovering new interests and new creative routes to explore, and also opportunities to support other people's work. Because really, what has brought me back to a gratifying and engaging creative life is like setting aside my creative ambition and supporting other people's visions. And that has, I was thinking before we got on the call today, there's a writer who taught at Kenyon when I was there, a guy named Lewis Hyde, who wrote this famous book called The Gift about creativity.
Mhm.
And at the beginning of that book, there's I think in a dedication to whomever he dedicated the book toward, he says, "What is good is given back." And I love yeah, I love the reciprocity of that. Like and I have found that to be true in my creative life now is
Mhm.
like all the effort that I put into these films that other people are directing, like I have also gotten a chance to shape those projects creatively in ways that I totally never would have expected. And now there are other projects of my own that I'm kind of leading, developing as a director that would not have come about and that I would not have the platform or potential for had I not kind of relinquished focus on myself for focus on someone else.
Yeah.
And so I guess I would say like sometimes it seems like things have stopped and that's okay and that's necessary. And I think the like grind set of it all can really limit the potential for discovering something new and some other like I have friends who are visual artists and I spent a lot of time, not that I ever got really good at it, but I spent a lot of my 20s doing ceramics randomly and that was great. And it actually I think it carried over into my writing life a lot because I got less focused on the outcome and um I just it became less I became less personally invested in seeing it become a particular kind of thing.
Interesting.
And
Is it kind of like because ceramics is a trust the process kind of art?
yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah. And also just knowing like 95% of what I'm making is not going to see the light of day and every step is thwarting my ambition for this thing. And so I'm just going to be as present as I can
Hmm.
and and that's what I found like when my it's so funny and I've had this heard this from other artists too, the stuff that just kind of happens that they aren't thinking through very much and just kind of dash out tends to be the right, most perfect, most engaging thing. And it's frustrating because you're used to, or at least I think this is true of most people, like you imagine hard work equals good outcome, but that's not always the case. And I think it yeah, leaving room for chance and discovery and yeah, so I'm kind of deviating from your question, but
I really love everything you're saying just in terms of like what an actual life of a writer is. You know, I think a lot of young writers, at least I can speak for myself, feel like it is more of like a linear, you're climbing this mountain, you get published or whatever your dream is, you make your movie and you've reached it and that is it. But it's really not like that at all. It is like a up and down sort of situation that you have to actively work at, you know, how are you going to sustain your love for this craft as you're going? So I totally resonate with everything you're saying.
yeah.
Um,
And I
so
if I could add one thing to
please,
that on the like circuitousness of it all,
yeah.
um there decisions that you are making now that maybe you aren't even aware are decisions. And I think that to kind of illustrate what I mean, like, so I left Kenyon College. I transferred back to the University of South Carolina. I started working at this film festival. I met all these amazing filmmakers. Fast forward 6, 7 years after the fact, it's 2021. I am the day that I am moving to New York City. I run into a filmmaker in the airport
Oh my gosh.
from
I love these
from
stories.
yeah, from the Indie Grits Festival. I have not even actually I wasn't even technically in New York yet because we had a weather related delay and we got grounded in DC. And I recognized this filmmaker from the festival. We'd never met before. We strike up a conversation, like officially met. And she says, "You should come to this film workshop that I host. It's like a weekly working group called Film Shop here in the city." And so I joined, and that's where I met my producing partner who I made this film with for The New Yorker. So
Mhm.
if it were not for me leaving Kenyon, going to like volunteer and then intern at this film festival in South Carolina, making that network, running into this person at the airport the day that I moved, going to this workshop. I wouldn't be like producing a film for the New Yorker or producing a film for PBS or doing anything interesting. So
Well, you
it
might have met somebody else in an
that's
elevator. Who knows?
yeah,
Who knows?
that's a good point. Yes, yeah, you're right. And so I guess what I'm saying is like that what am I saying? I think it's just that
You never know what experience is going to lead to something else, I think.
yes, yes.
Mhm.
And there's no such thing as I think when you have the early validation of like this is your path, this is your talent, you need to give everything to this. Everything that is not focused on writing as you understood it to be, feels like wasted time. So I want to dispel for any listener who might be in a similar situation as I was like 10 years ago. Um, it's not wasted time. And and in fact, like beyond that, it is you are probably gaining all the skills and experience you need to be receptive to this opportunity when it presents itself. And um yeah, so it's I mean a lot of chance and good luck, but also I think when you're following your enthusiasm someplace and it's in pursuit of something meaningful and creative, then there is no losing scenario. Um,
I
yeah.
love that. Yeah, good luck, but you're putting yourself in situations that are opening yourself up to experience that good luck, I think is true to what you're saying. And taking it back to kind of supporting your fellow creatives, I think there's nothing more important than doing that in terms of like learning what kind of writer and creator you are from your friends. It's always going to do good to just be nice to people and to form those connections in your career because you never know that like an assistant you meet on one project is going to be like a major director in 10 years or whatever. People, end up in really cool places. So I think that's an important takeaway as well.
Yes.
So for our young filmmakers specifically, can we just hear a little bit about your process through your documentary? Like what were the specific steps? And for somebody interested in going into the film route, what specific advice do you have?
I think the best advice I can give is to, metaphorically speaking, look to your left and your right around you in your immediate vicinity because there are people doing interesting work that need your support and that will be very grateful to have your talent and attention on their side. And that has always led me to really amazing opportunities when I believe really, really fervently in the power of email. And when you get when you come across the work of like I cannot tell you, Avery, how many times I have emailed artists and writers and filmmakers that I admire and they actually respond.
Yes, the same thing with me. I agree. It's the best.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yes, and it's there's like a real, I think I
Community.
would yes, yeah,
You want
like
to give back. You want to like
yeah,
you know how difficult it is to go on that journey. So most people, of course, there are the exceptions, but I have found as well that most people are wanting to like hand it back and then it continues the cycle. It's like when you make it, you want to give it back to others and that's so important.
yeah, absolutely. So in terms of advice, I don't really feel like I'm in a I still feel so confused about this industry and I feel like I'm at the very start of my quote unquote career, which it sounds even silly to call it a career at this point, but
No, I
um
think that's so helpful for teens to hear. I really do, is that it is a continuous discovery process.
yes.
When you're a creative, it's like I feel like it's more rare to reach a point, as we were talking about before, where you're like, okay, I've made it. This is my career. I did it. It's like you're constantly evolving. So, what are you working on next, and where can our audience find you?
Yes. So we are in the editing phase for another documentary short that will appear on PBS next fall
Okay.
called Odd Man In. That's about a pre-Stonewall gay rights pioneer who became a movement pariah when he embraced what we would now call conversion therapy in the 50s and 60s. So you can learn more about that film if you Google ITVS, and Odd Man In. There's some more details about it. Um, and our film Cashing Out that I mentioned earlier will premiere on the New Yorker magazine's website in the spring of 2025. We don't have an exact date yet, but I'll get that to you guys soon.
Awesome. Well, Luke, thank you so much for your time and for your wisdom. I know that our teens are going to get so much out of it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. This was so fun. Thank you.
Of course.
Well, that wraps up our episode for May. As always, thank you so much for listening to our show, and a happy almost summer. Enjoy the warmer weather by being creative outside, and if you're attending the Carnegie Hall National Ceremony, definitely keep an eye out on your inbox and our Instagram page for fun things to do in New York City this summer. One of the very best places in the world to be a creative person. And if you're not going to New York this summer, take New York City to you and find us online and connect with your fellow alumni. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, so you receive all of our updates. Please consider supporting teen artists and writers further by checking out the donation link in our show notes. And if you are a Scholastic Awards alum interested in sharing your story on the podcast, please reach out. We want to hear from you. So email us social@artandwriting.org. Until next month, artists and writers, stay creative, connect with your fellow alums, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye, everyone.